This presentation is on AI and how to move from prompting AI, which we're probably familiar with, to building solutions with AI. So the agenda, we're going to talk about, first, we'll define what AI is. We're going to talk about why this matters now. We'll go over the AI spectrum and a deeper dive into basic prompting, agentic AI, retrieval augmented generation or a RAG system, and then robotic process automation or RPA workflows. How they fit together. We'll talk about governance, risk, controls. We'll go over Model Technology's approach to AI, and if you're out there, where to start. And we will not have any questions and answers on this one. So, what is AI? It is machines performing tasks that normally require human intelligence, right? You have data that get fed into models to create predictions, generations, or decisions, and we have a lot of examples of that. We'll talk about a little bit more in depth. We'll talk about traditional machine learning, structured data, supervised targets. But the one you're probably familiar with is foundation AI or generative AI. And it is large-scale pre-training, so you don't have to train the AI model. And it's really good at producing text, code, images, etc. Really, AI excels at pattern recognition and language understanding at scale. So why is this relevant now? Well, we have exploding volumes of data and a bunch of different knowledge silos, right? Knowledge workers are overwhelmed by repetitive digital tasks. We are seeing a shift from models that chat to models that act and actually do work. And the tooling maturity has made significant improvements from the APIs, the orchestration workflow engines, vector databases. This gives us the capability to automate AI. And overall, as businesses, we're feeling a lot of competitive pressure for faster insights, lower cost, and differentiated services. So we're going to talk about the AI working definition spectrum, and I'm just going to go ahead and get the examples out there. So we talked a bit about machine learning on the far left, but let's use an example. So fraud detection in banking. So you swipe a credit card in St. Louis, you swipe a credit card in St. Louis, you swipe a credit card in St. Louis, you swipe a credit card in New York. Machine learning can pick up that anomaly, right? And then you can do something with it, alert, send out an email, do all sorts of things. The foundation models you're probably more familiar with, Perplexity or ChatGPT, they're really good. A good use case for that is summarizing a long document like a case study or white paper. And then agentic AI is kind of the next evolution where you have an AI sales agent autonomously conducting experiments, prospecting your CRM, sending out emails on your behalf, creating the emails on your behalf, getting responses, and then updating your CRM, right? Underneath all of that, you can leverage something like an RPA or robotic process automation to make it into a workflow for the business. And you can leverage foundation models or trained models or custom projects to make it more agentic AI. And then you have retrieval augmented generation. A good example of this is an IT help desk answering questions based on an internal wiki. So you feed it a bunch of your information for your business, and then you can have it answer people's questions or retrieve data, free text queries, things like that. So beyond prompting, getting these prompts into systems, the first thing to acknowledge is that chatbots are not a full solution. You still need context, memory tools, workflows, and integrations. And I believe that businesses are going to win by embedding AI inside of business processes and data estates, and we're going to talk more about that today. So basic prompting, right? We have ChatGPT, Claude, Grammarly, just some examples of it. You can ask questions, generate images, summarize documents, develop a strategy, write blogs or articles. These AI tools and models tend to have specializations for each, and in this example, I use ChatGPT to generate an image of an alligator playing baseball for my son's baseball team, the Gators. But you can also refine your prompts and say, I want it to be more realistic. So it created an image of an actual alligator playing baseball, which is our team's chat logo. Some AI assistants and custom projects. So these things you can add instructions on the back end, right? So, and what that does for you is it narrows the focus of the bot to certain topics, and you can do things like ensure the tone and the formatted responses that you need out of it. You can set identity, context, purpose, boundaries, interaction guidelines, and answer outlines, right? And a good example of this is I have an engineer that helps me on my Power BI. And this is the instructions that I put into my Power BI engineer. You're a data sage, an all-knowing, endlessly patient expert on Power BI, including DAX, Power Query, service automation, Fabric, deployment pipelines, Microsoft Graph, endpoints, SDKs, permissions, security, and throttling. What this does for me is when I upload some M code or some DAX into this bot, it knows its job is an all-knowing, endlessly patient engineer to help me with this line of work. Taking it a step further, in a custom project, you can upload files, right? So in this case, I've used our model custom chat GPT template for SOWs as a learning node. Now, caveat here, I would highly recommend a Teams instance of chat GPT so that your data is not being used to be retraining the rest of the LLMs. And the context for this is a project has been requested by a client. You will build an SOW based on their request, leveraging model's standard SOW structure, which is a project file I've added to it. Your role, and then I added a role of you're a solutions architect with 25 years. You've delivered similar projects multiple times, understand the risks, limitations, dependencies. So I've added context, role, I've added objectives if we were able to scroll to really tailor this agent, this assistant, this bot to do exactly what I needed to do without any emojis or fluff or any of those things. So then we get into agentic AI, and some of the key capabilities here are goal decomposition, so breaking tasks into smaller subtasks. And you can use tools and API orchestration, think CRM, ERP, RAG systems, RPA search bots to make it agentic AI. You have memory and state management across the steps, so it's not just producing something for you, it has some memory and some workflow management on it. You have policy and guardrail enforcement, a human in the loop for escalation and approvals, and we'll talk more about why that's important later. But let's go into the retrieval augmented generation, or the RAG system, why this is important. So you take an LLM, right, like ChatGPT, and you use some what we call fresh domain grounded content, right? So internal trusted sources such as documentation, or if you're at our organization, we feed, let's say, our 11 years of SOWs. What this allows me to do is when I query the agent, it's going to use the 11 years of SOWs. So if I say I need all of the SOWs for client XYZ, SOW numbers, topic, cost, analysis, breakdown, all of these things, it is now using what is considered domain-grounded content, meaning it's a point of authority for us. This reduces hallucination. So a hallucination, I think ChatGPT 3, if I'm remembering correctly, had a hallucination percentage of 30%. GPT-5 that's coming out soon is predicted to be less than 15% hallucinations. It improves accuracy and trust when you're entrusting the capabilities of retrieval of data to an AI agent. It also enables secure tenant-specific knowledge and responses, and it decouples knowledge updates from expensive model retraining. So if you're using one of the pre-built foundational or pre-trained foundational models as an example, you don't have to feed it images of a banana for it to determine this is an image of a banana. But if you develop your LLM from scratch that's not pre-trained, you have to retrain or pre-train all of the data you want it to recognize and to acknowledge. Here's an example of what a RAG system could look like in Azure. You have some servers for compute on the front end using Azure AI Search, and now in preview you can actually wire up SharePoint libraries to the AI Search. And then you can use Azure OpenAI, which is essentially GPT, ChatGPT, hosted in your Azure environment as the AI agent. So robotic process automation, if we think about this as software bots that mimic deterministic inputs and outputs through UIs, APIs, think of it as a workflow engine. It's rule-based. It excels at high-volume, repeatable, structured tasks, reduces manual clicks, copy-paste data entry errors. Tools like UiPath, N8N, Zapier, Make, Automation Anywhere, Power Automate. These are all examples of an RPA tool. And this is an example of an RPA bot that I'm using. So the example here is I like to post on social media, LinkedIn specifically, about some tech ideas that I have. However, I am really bad at designing hashtags and the copy to make it optimized and within the character limits of LinkedIn. So what I have here is I have a form. And what this form does is it takes an input for an idea. It searches the internet through SERP API, and then based on some custom instructions I've written, sends that over to an assistant that I have in the API to formulate the post and puts it out in JSON to move on to the next step. The next step is I take that post and I wrap it around in HTML, which gives me an approve button and an email to say, hey, read the post. If you like it, approve it. If it's approved, it's going to post to LinkedIn. If it's declined, it's not going to post. So we'll talk more about this workflow as we go, but this is an RPA workflow that leverages two different AI agents. So let's get to the differences between AI, Agentic AI, RAG, and RPA, because I think this is important to understand. So generates language, ChatGPT certainly does. Agentic AI would be like a Python coded or an instructed bot in a workflow of sorts or a process. And so it certainly generates language. RAG AI, yes, and it's grounded on the content you've provided. And RPA, no, it is simply a workflow holder. So uses tools and API. Natively in ChatGPT, it's limited. Now, there's been a lot of talk about the new workflows that are coming out with it, but I believe that it is still very much code-driven. An agentic AI, if you're rooting it in something like OpenAI's API interface and linking documents and evaluations, yes, it can use tools and APIs, but you have to code all of that up. A RAG AI uses a retrieval tool like Azure Search as an example. And then RPA is done via scripted steps, so you can really do anything you want to do with tools and APIs, assuming you have a connection to it. So data grounding, natively, if you log into ChatGPT and you say, you ask it questions about your data, it's going to be very weak. It does not have access to your data unless you upload some files to it. Agentic AI, it depends on how you write the agentic AI and the process behind it. A RAG AI is strong retrieval capabilities with strong data grounding, and deterministic inputs from the RPA. So it's, again, how you design it. Autonomy, can these run on their own? ChatGPT by itself just kind of sits there, right, waiting for an input. Agentic AI, you can do some coding on the back end to make it have like a chrono timer to say, or a timer to say, hey, I'm going to reach out to your email every so often and get the important things, right? But generally speaking, its capabilities to run autonomously are limited. Agentic AI is somewhere in the medium to high because you're coding up all around it. The RAG AI is somewhere in the middle, and RPA is low to high. You can make it as autonomous as you want. What are they best for? So if we look at just ChatGPT, Perplexity, SERP API, so these things are basically good for unstructured insight, right? I'm going to pose a question to it. It's going to give me an answer. Or give it an instruction, it's going to generate something for me. Agentic AI is really good for multi-step tasks. Again, you're coding it all. The RAG AI is great for knowledge, questions, and answers. And the RPA is really good for business process, workflow, repetitive actions. So let's take my LinkedIn bot here, and I'll just unfold it all. So it reaches out to actually write the post through AI, just through OpenAI's API, ChatGPT. And the instructions that I've put into the AI agent are coded up, but it is still just AI, but it does have some agentic capabilities because it is a custom assistant, right? The RPA itself holds the whole workflow. It is considered an agentic workflow. And essentially, because you have a custom assistant, you're using agentic AI capabilities. It's not doing the same task every time. It has some creative thought in it. Now, If I wanted to make this posting bot, just complete Agentic AI, let's break the steps down of what it looks like today and what changes would need to be modified to make it Agentic AI. So the current steps, I have a user triggering it. So I launch a form. I use OpenAPI with tone instructions, or OpenAI's API, to create the post. I structure the output, and then I write an email for human approval. The email goes to the human for approval. If it's approved, it goes to LinkedIn. If I added the steps, hey, go fetch trends, which I just added this afternoon, to the API LinkedIn scraper, right, to say, hey, what's trending on LinkedIn right now and how do I get my post to rank up there? I would draft the post, evaluate the post. If the post scores less than a 7 on a scale of 0 to 10, then I'm going to revise it. So the agentic process would look like this. A user triggers it, it fetches trending hashtags, it uses the company's database to pull names or teams or other info into the post, uses style guide or past data to fetch tone, generates a post, structures the output, critiques the tone, engagement potential, and grammar, scores it. If it's less than a 7, it's going to rewrite it. If it's approved, it's going to post to LinkedIn. So the components of agentic AI would be it self-decides whether or not to output, retry, or submit. And it remembers past high-performing posts for style references. So where they complement each other. So you can have a RAG system that feeds agentic AI with trusted context before acting. Okay? You can have an agentic AI that orchestrates RPA bots, or turn that around and say I have an RPA workflow that orchestrates agentic AI to complete structured steps with reasoning or after reasoning. The RPA supplies data back to the store for logs, status updates, etc. And the full loop would be question, retrieve, decide, do the thing you decided on or act, and then record the data. Just an example of a workflow that this one is embedded in our Teams channel, and this Teams channel reaches out, authenticates, and posts back to the Teams channel after getting the answer from OpenAPI. Now this OpenAI instance is running in our Azure environment, so it's a custom Azure OpenAI chat model. So governance, risk, and controls. This is a very critical part, whether you're doing agentic AI, simply just having AI bots, or doing RPA workflows. The data security, the role-based access, and all the different retrieval layers is critical. Careful of prompt injection or tool misuse and safeguards, having filters, security, and calling APIs and webhooks. Audit trails for autonomous actions. Human approval thresholds and rollback paths. Model monitoring, meaning is it drifting away from where you wanted the original intent to be? Is it hallucinating? What's the cost of the model to run and to operate? And then regulatory compliance, and this is going to be very industry specific if you're governed by any. Anytime that you bring an AI agent, an agentic workflow, or an agentic AI agent into the mix, you need to identify what good metrics look like. Like, is this successful? Is this doing what we need it to do? So some ideas for metrics would be what percentage of inquiries are auto-resolved without a human in the loop? What is the average handle time reduction, meaning how long does it take a person if they have to get involved? Has data entry error been reduced? What are the user satisfaction scores? Have they increased because they're getting their answers or their data faster? What is the cost per transaction versus the baseline? And then policy adherence and exception rates are also good things to monitor. So how we approach this process at Model. The first thing we have to do is determine an AI strategy. And so an appropriate AI strategy is largely based on organizational maturity for what you're trying to use AI in the mix for. You must identify use cases and success metrics are agreed upon by the business stakeholders to solve a business problem, and you have to identify the criticality of the problem, the complexity, the autonomy that the solution can run with. Document things like the data sources, like what APIs are the data coming from? Is the data coming from? Do we have access to these APIs? What's the security around that? Investigate all of the regulatory compliance requirements, security considerations, and then the ongoing management roles are defined. Much like any other automation you put in place, it works until it doesn't. So somebody will need to manage it if the tool updates, if there's updates to the API, the versions change, things like that. Determine the tooling that's going to be used. Is it API based? Does it have APIs in the mix? Are you using RPA scripts, infrastructure? What's the projected cost? What knowledge or repos are identified to feed the agent? Are you going to have to code a lot on the agent, or is it all light code, no code? Develop a proof of concept, test the operationalization, the integration, and the training of the people that are going to need to leverage it, use it, or interact with it. And then manage it in an ongoing fashion. So is it running? What's the cost look like? When do I update it? When do I have downtime for it? Just like any other IT service. But if you're thinking to yourself, where do I start? Here's where I would start. First and foremost, you need an AI cybersecurity policy for your company. What are you doing to allow or to prevent people from using AI in your organization today? Then you determine the AI strategy for efficiency, effectiveness, an expert model, or a growth model. Define the use cases based on the current process, the criticality and complexity, and the autonomy. And then from an autonomy perspective, if it's a low risk, you can fully automate it by AI. So I have an intelligent workflow that cleans up my email. Pretty low risk. It's got some safeguards in it, but it's just cleaning up my email, moving things around. A medium risk would be equal human and AI collaboration. I feed the LinkedIn post idea to my AI bot, and it sends me an email for approval when it's done. So now I'm interacting equal parts human, equal parts AI. Or if it's a high risk piece of it, you might want to have more human interaction depending on the criticality for your business. You also need to consider end user interactions. Is someone going to need to fill out a form? Is it when a document's placed on a library or a SharePoint site? How are people or humans going to interact with it, and do they need to interact with it? What the cost is going to be for the entire model. The supportability in an ongoing fashion is critical as well. So that is my AI presentation.